We're working to a revised agenda. Have fellow members received revised agendas, please? Any apologies? Any declarations of interest, please? Item 3 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on 7th July 2010 and the extraordinary meeting of the Council on 28th July 2010. Could somebody move them, please? Are they agreed?
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask at this point, in terms of the minutes...
Can you stand up, please? Can you stand up, please?
Is that permissible?
Well,
is that permissible to ask about the minutes?
Is it something about the minutes?
Yes, it's about the minutes, as I said.
Chair, if I can just clarify, the only matters that can be raised in relation to the minutes are to their accuracy.
Yeah, OK. Can I ask about the accuracy then, that in the minutes it said they were going to actively lobby against the government's proposed 25 to 30% cuts. Is that accurate in the way it's worded, and has that actually been done? And in what form?
Chair, that's, I believe it's an accurate reflection of the minute, and a letter was sent by the leader to the Secretary of State, Eric Pickles, on the 30th of July.
And what was the reply, Mr. Mayor?
Chair, again, if I can answer that, I'm not aware that there has been a reply.
With that, do we agree the minutes? Thank you. To receive any announcement from the Mayor, I've got 4 announcements, so you will have to persevere with me. The first one is to announce the sad news that the former chair of the Standards Committee, Canon Barry Blowers, died peacefully on Saturday, 28th August, in the Royal Derby Hospital after a short illness. His funeral will be for close family only. What a Thanksgiving service is to be held this Saturday, 11 September at 10:30 a.m. at All Saint Church, Atwell Road, Mickleover, Derby. I would now like all of us to stand for a minute's silence, please. Would you like to say something, Councillor Holmes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like many of my fellow councillors, I had the pleasure of working alongside Reverend Canon Barry Blowers as a member of the Standards Committee. Up until his retirement, he'd been the chair of the committee for 9 years. Full Council received the committee's annual report recently, in which new chair Philip Sunderland spoke of the committee's gratitude for his service to both the city and the council over many years. This praise was certainly both earned and well deserved. On joining the committee, I remember receiving a warm and heartfelt welcome from Canon Blowers. As chair, he ensured that it was a very rewarding committee to be part of. Canon Blowers had an impressive ability to deal with any matter brought to us, and he did so with fairness, common sense, and above all, decency and compassion. He always ensured that everyone could have their say, for opposing views to be debated fairly, and would often help committee members to come to a majority view on very difficult decisions, however long it took, and without influence. I've spoken to members of staff about Cannon Blowers. As one said to me on hearing the news of his death, he was a lovely man. Mr. Mayor, I know that my fellow councillors will join me in expressing our thanks and gratitude to Cannon Blowers and to say that he will be greatly missed. Thank you.
Anybody from the Labour Group want to say anything on this? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Just say a few words. Yes, I did work with Barry on the Standards Committee for quite a few years, actually, but I knew him many years ago, actually, when he was the vicar of St Giles, Normanton. And when I was at Homeland School, we used to have a service there on the first Friday of every term. And I do remember him towards the end being there, as I think he was just a young curate in those days. He was, as Councillor Holmes said, he was really a lovely man. He was very different when he actually was chairing a hearing. He was quite serious, quite severe, and he used to pin the person down with a look and really get to the bottom of what the problem was, and he wanted to be fair. And I'm just very sorry that he's died so suddenly, so quickly, because although he was 82, he was extremely healthy up to a few weeks ago. And if anything, I'm glad that the end came quickly for him, because I wouldn't want to see Barry suffer. Thank you.
Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too had the pleasure and honour of working alongside Cannon Blowers on the Standards Committee for quite some years. And he always impressed me as somebody who had a great heart for people. That just shone out of him, really. He had great dignity and was someone of real integrity. Throughout his life, talking to other people that knew him through various stages of his life, he was always somebody who thought of other people and really put himself out for other people. And I think he will be very, very sadly missed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the second announcement is I would like to use this opportunity to point out that tomorrow, 9 September, will be the 175th anniversary of Royal Assent for the Municipal Corporations Act 1835. This key piece of legislation, which was enacted in January the following year, is the act on which all subsequent local government law is based. It also heralded the creation of organized borough police forces in urban areas. All of us who serve as elected members or who work in local government owe a debt of gratitude to those 19th century visionaries who worked hard for the cause of democracy. The act rid us of the rotten boroughs that have existed until then, though you will be pleased to learn that Derby was not considered to be one of them. The next announcement is, I just want to say, can I thank and congratulate on behalf of everyone who attended, all those who were involved in the organization and delivery of the Darley Park concert last Sunday night. Everything about that event ran smoothly and was most enjoyable, and it was also an excellent example of partnership working. It's growing bigger and bigger, better and better every year, and everyone who took part in that deserves our congratulations. And the final announcement from me is, tonight is our Strategic Director of Resources last full council meeting. Don McClure leaves the council shortly to take up a similar appointment with Durham Council. Don started as Assistant Director for Revenues and Benefits, now Customer Services, in May 2002, and took up the post of Director of Resources in April 2007. Between those two posts, he was the Assistant Director for Corporate Finance from November 2006 to April 2007. I'm sure we all want to thank Don for his outstanding service and wish him well for his new post. Councillor Jennings, would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Don's been here for 8 years, and when I said goodbye to him last night at his last cabinet meeting, he had a huge grin on his face. So I don't think he's too sad to be leaving. All three groups that are sitting in the chamber have been in control during the time that Don's been here. And I know that Don has assisted equally each group in achieving their aims, finding the money they need to find to achieve their particular manifesto commitments in some cases, to certainly manage to balance the books every year, although I'm not sure how. And he's going to an authority where he's got plenty of money. He's going to a cash-rich authority, so I thought that at some stage in the future we might actually tap him up for a loan. But I'd just like to thank Don really for his professionalism, for his impartiality, for his sound advice, and also for reining us in sometimes when we have to come up with these grandiose schemes that are quite clearly unaffordable. And it's up to Don to give us the bad news sometimes. So thank you very much, Don, on behalf of certainly of my group, and I'm sure of the rest of the councillors in the chamber. I hope you enjoy your time in sunny Durham.
Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Don McClure, a quiet, effective officer, probably a legend in his own golfing time. I have to admire him, or his nerve. He has the courage to time limit his meetings with elected members to ensure he gets on the tee on time. He's done it to me twice, and I actually thought this is a cracking idea, and thinking, why didn't I say something? But he's done it. I know he's nearly converted to an ardent Derby fan, but I suspect, in reality, probably not. Don is returning to his roots in the North East and to a Labour-controlled authority, something we on this side of the chamber are working hard on to return to here. There's no doubt that Derby has become part of Don's family. Both his grown-up daughters, I understand, are living here, and he has a grandchild in the city. So I know he'll be returning from time to time, and he's always welcome, and I'll always buy him a beer. From the Labour group, I would like to thank Don for his diligent, effective service to the City Council, and as the AD for Revs and Bens, as it was called, followed by AD of Corporate Finance, and latterly as the Director of Resources. Thank you, Don. Our loss is Durham's gain, and I have to warn you, in fact, Councillor Revenue is not here, but she still might come and visit you. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Don, it's been a real pleasure to have worked with you during my time here on the council. I suppose I'm partly responsible because I was on one of the original interview panels when Don applied back in the midst of time now, it seems. We'll certainly miss you, and I'm sure the rest of the councillors in the chamber will miss you too. But you've done it. Ganin Yen is what I've got written down on this paper. Ganin Yen. Because when Don speaks, you can tell he doesn't really come from these parts, and he is really going home, which is what Ganin Yen means. So we wish you well. We'll miss you. Perhaps keep in touch. We'll probably hear about what's going on up there on the circuit, as it were. And we wish you all the very best, Don, and thanks a lot.
Item 5 is to receive any statements from members of the Council Cabinet. I believe there is one statement from Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, can I say thank you to the leadership of the other political groups for allowing me to make this statement tonight. For some time, there's been some uncertainty over the medium to long-term use of the proposed park and ride facility situated at the Manor Car Park close to Royal Derby Hospital. Following the opening of the hospital, parking issues have arisen and are still ongoing. They've impacted greatly both on local residents and staff alike. After taking up my role as Cabinet Member for Planning and Environment, it became clear to me that not all of the parking spaces available had been utilised, as the Trust were concerned that the Council may wish to begin use of the park and ride service. This represents around 300 potential spaces for members of staff to use. Therefore, I wish to announce that it is the Council's intention to put on hold the start of the park and ride service with the intention that they be used as parking spaces for members of staff. This will allow the Trust to release additional parking permits to staff before Christmas, which we hope will further reduce the problems being experienced by local residents in that area of the city. Further to this, in the new year, residents' parking schemes are expected to be operational, which will deliver further improvements to the area. Moving forward, ourselves and the Trust have agreed to work in partnership to find a longer-term solution to the travel and parking issues around the hospital. Early discussions have involved exploring ways to provide increased parking provision in the vicinity of the site. It is hoped that the renewed joint approach will form a solid foundation to delivering a more long-term managed approach to travel to and from the hospital. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Densah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I first of all welcome Councillor Holmes' intention to try to relieve the problem that's been there for quite a long time in terms of parking around the Derby Royal Hospital and the difficulties it causes for staff and for the local residents and for people who want to visit the hospital. So I welcome this solution. It is only, though, temporary, and I think we need to be careful that, as I know, last year when the Hospital Trust representatives were asked to attend the 3 neighbourhood forums that we have in Normanton that I chaired, and each one of them raised concerns not only for their travelling and ability to use the facilities around the hospital for parking and transportation, but the difficulties it was causing locally to residents and staff as well. And at that time, promises were made by the representatives of this Hospital Trust to say they will respond to those solutions. We in Normanton Neighbourhood forums are still waiting for those solutions. And by the sound of the actions you're trying to take here, they're not being realised to date. The Trust has had a long time to respond to these solutions, and it's important that they are progressed to do that, and I welcome the fact that you'll be trying to work in partnership with them. I have to say, though, that I think other attempts have been made to work in partnership with them, and it's not got anywhere, so I wish you the best of luck in trying to achieve that. We also need to be careful that in order to find a solution to this problem, which is real and immediate for people living in and around the hospital and wider, and the staff, of course, that we don't actually, by removing the park and ride facility, create another problem of the congestion removal that we are trying to achieve in the city as a whole. And that, I assume, that park and ride facility was strategic to ensure that we actually reduce the number of vehicles that enter the city boundaries. So I'd like some assurance that it's not going to be an open-ended decision, because one strategic priority should not be compromised as a result of some of the inadequate responses and ability to find solutions around the hospital parking. So I hope, Councillor Holmes, you will take that on board, and that pending the difficulties which will obviously arise around Christmas, very soon in the new year, we reinstate the plan to have the park and ride, but look to challenge the hospital trust authorities to ensure that they deliver on the promises and the plans that were made many years ago before the hospital trust was even approved. And I remember that because I was the chair of Adult Social Care Services when this chamber supported the hospital trust to merge and form one site on the current site. So it's important that they are held to account to deliver on the obligations that they promised many, many years ago. Thank you.
Anybody from Council? Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this statement that confirms the position of previous administrations. Councillor Densah rightly says it's a problem that's been going on for a number of years, and the hospital are working very closely with Little Over Neighbourhood Board, and there are regular meetings outside of that board meeting with hospital staff. I'm a little bit concerned, though, at the hospital being confused about their not having access to 300 spaces, because we've put on hold this park and ride scheme for a number of years. And I think in Councillor Densah's time it was talked about. I'm not quite sure about my memory there, but it's been going on for a long number of years. It's not a recent phenomenon. I'm not sure, though, that we should set a date, as Councillor Densah recommends. I think we should set a point where conditions are right to withdraw the licence to these 300 places, and that must be done by negotiation with the hospital and, might I say, the neighbourhood board when we're just about to embark on statutory consultation on residents' parking in the area. And when that has been decided, settled down and embedded, then we will have a better position as to the needs for the future. And it's at that point, I think, we should start thinking about setting dates, not before then. So I welcome the confirmation that the spaces are available. And I also welcome Councillor Dinser's reminder that we must keep challenging the hospital to deliver the promises. Little Overboard has done that regularly, I think almost at every meeting. They're very good at making the promises, not so hot on delivering them. Although I am pleased to report that a few months ago they did submit a travel plan, albeit a few years late. It has been submitted, it needs tweaking, but it's the basis for ongoing work. So thank you, and I hope you're going to continue that challenge to the hospital, not just to rely on our 300 spaces, but do something more longer lasting. Thank you.
Next item is to receive any questions from the public to members of the Council Cabinet and answers to those questions. The first one is from Tom Fulop about the big screen. We got Mr. Fulop here.
Well, my first question was, will Derby City Council be put any Derby County games on the big screen this season in the city centre? Yeah.
Good evening, Tom. The question I've got is, will Derby City Council be showing any live football games on the city centre big screen this season? So I'll answer which I think that's the one you wanted to ask. We have not to date screened any complete football games on the big screen, and at the moment in time we have no plans to do so. We do, however, screen Score on a Saturday during the football season. This is the BBC's Football Highlights programme, which covers highlights of the day's games and includes the football results. Thank you.
Right. On a number of occasions during the run-up to the World Cup finals, Councillor Grimmadale stated if England was to reach the final, Derby City Council would screen the event on Darley Park. A figure of 110,000 was quoted to stage the final. My question is, can I ask Councillor Grimmadale whether that money could be reallocated and either equally distributed amongst the 17 neighbourhood boards or put towards staging a multicultural music festival for the summer of 2011?
Councillor Grimmadale, can you switch your mic off?
That's a very interesting question, Tom, and I'll endeavour to take that on board and come back to you on that. Thank you.
Next question is from Dorothy Skriptek to Councillor Wood. I understand she's not. Is she here? No, she's not here. So a written answer would be sent to her. Next question is from Patrick Molson to Councillor Jennings about the refurbishment of Council House. And I understand Mr. Molson is not here either, so a written answer would be sent to him as well. So the next question is from Mr. Sear to Councillor Holmes about 10-10 pledge. Mr. Sear, please.
On Thursday, October 29th, 2009, City Council committed itself to the 10-10 pledge, whereby the Council would aim to reduce its own carbon emissions by 10% in 2010. And in practice, the Council said that it would achieve at least a 3% reduction. The following day, the Liberal Democrat leader, Nick Clegg, visited the city, and it was reported that he praised Derby for signing up to the 10-10 pledge to cut carbon emissions. And he said it was important for local authorities to take a lead in working to combat climate change. Could the Council please report in percentage terms on the progress that has been made by the Council towards meeting the 10-10-10 target?
Councillor Holmes.
Good evening, Mr. Sear. Thank you very much. The 1010 action year mirrors the Council's financial year, and so we have until the 31st of March 2011 to reduce our carbon emissions and energy usage. We've always acknowledged that a 10% reduction in the Council's carbon emissions over a 12-month period would be a major challenge. The 1010 campaign recognises this and accepts that some organisations may find it virtually impossible to achieve a 10% cut in 2010, which is why 3% or greater is considered acceptable. As stated by the leader at the last full council, we will not achieve a 10% reduction, but we are currently on track to reach our target of 3% savings. That's compared to the previous financial year of 09-10, the baseline year for 1010 campaign. The Council will be in a far better position to make significant reductions in carbon emission and energy usage when the extensive refurbishment of the Council House is completed, which is just one of the many reasons why that project is vital in moving us forward as an organisation. The Council is using data collation and reporting procedure required under the National Indicator 185, percentage CO2 reduction from local authority operations, to assess the progress it makes in meeting its 1010 ambitions. This will effectively mean that we will not have a definite figure to assess our performance for this period until late summer 2010. Thank you. 2011, sorry.
Any supplementary, Mr. Sears, please?
Whilst welcoming the news that the Council is on target to reach its 3% pledge, I hope the Council realises that 3% is a small figure and wonder if it is already working towards a figure for the following year, and if so, what would that figure be?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Sear. It's very difficult to answer that question, but all I can do is reassure you that we're working very, very hard to ensure that we reduce our energy consumption and our CO2 emissions. You know, I can't predict 2 years in advance in terms of where we might be, but we're just working very, very hard. Thank you.
Next question is from Mr. Robinson to Councillor Holmes, work of the Climate Change Commission. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening. My question my question, once to start the statement, is it's the view of the Derby Climate Change Coalition that it was a mistake to shut down the City Council Climate Change Commission. The view of the Derby Climate Change Coalition that it was a mistake to shut down the Commission. The Commission explored and promoted good ideas about how Derby City Council could tackle climate change. The Commission, despite some weaknesses, and I acknowledge the weaknesses, of authority mainly, brought together a number of individuals from the political parties, and I was very impressed by the strength and the vigour and the commitment from those people from all the parties. Brought them together, and also brought them together with people from outside experts and people from in our own coalition. So. And one of the things that worried us is we've lost that capacity to consult and organise. Anyway, we were told that the responsibilities would be placed within the portfolio of the Chief Executive, and this would ensure that actions around Council's own greenhouse gas emissions would be served better, working through the Scrutiny Management Commission. Here's my question. Could the Council please report on the work that has taken place and how it is improving on the work, and I say improving on the work, that was done by the Commission?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. Good evening, and Mr. Robinson. Just for clarification, the Council's climate change and energy management function now forms part of the Chief Executive's office and is covered by the Scrutiny Management Commission. We will continue with the Climate Change Board in its current structure, which will be chaired by Councillor Ingle, along with myself and cross-party membership. Reducing the Council's carbon footprint and energy usage is embedded throughout every department. It is something that everyone working for the Council should consider in everything that they do. Under a Conservative administration, the Council continues to recognise its commitment to reducing the impact we have on the environment, along with reducing our energy consumption. We also recognise that being green should not necessarily mean that the public pay more for services or be hit with extra costs. Since taking minority control, as we pledged prior to the election, we have been refocusing the Council efforts towards the implementation of schemes that present proven savings and that offer best use of public funds. We are exploring and implementing renewable energy systems and technology and working very hard to lead from the front to encourage the public and business to reduce their carbon footprint and energy usage. Regarding the scrutiny function, since the reorganisation agreed at the July 7th meeting at full council, the work of the Climate Change Unit now falls within the remit of the Scrutiny Management Commission. However, the SMC has not had a scheduled meeting since July the 7th. It is due to meet on the 21st of September, and I'm advised that the agenda will include the work programme for the remainder of the municipal year. It's very important to remember that the commissions are responsible for setting their own work programmes. Waste management falls under the new Neighbourhoods Commission, which has held one meeting since being set up on July the 7th. I'm informed that the Commission's Chair and Vice Chair were tasked to look at the various suggestions for a work programme and make recommendations to the September meeting. Their recommendations were made in consultation with the Conservative and Independent members. One suggestion was to review the possible benefits of anaerobic digestion. The discussion notes say that such a review would be worthwhile, but the potential scale means it cannot be a priority for this Commission in this year. I'm aware that Councillor Carr, the Chair of the SMC, and Councillor Troop are interested in exploring the issue. Because of the climate change impact, it might be that the SMC at its meeting on the 21st of September will itself decide to conduct a review along the lines suggested at the Neighbourhood Commission. But I repeat that the Commissions are responsible for setting their own work programmes. Thank you.
Supplementary, Mr. Robinson, please.
From what I can see, you're talking about embedding things, but nothing is actually being done. And this is what I'm really worried about, not just talking about saving money, but actually having a positive and giving a real lead about, doing real things about reducing your carbon and greenhouse gas emissions.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. If I may, I don't know if you're going to wait for my reply to Councillor Troop's question shortly. I will deal with several examples of how we're being proactive, leading from the front in that area. Thank you.
Okay, then the next item is to receive any written questions about the business or functions of Derbyshire Police Authority, Derbyshire Fire Authority and Derby Homes, and the answers to those questions. There are no questions received. Item 8 is to receive any written questions from non-council cabinet members to members of the council cabinet and the answers to those questions. The first question I have from Councillor Tuplin to Councillor Webb about the redevelopment of Arthur Neil House. Councillor Tuplin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Roy. Could the Cabinet member please tell Council when work will start on the redevelopment of Arthur Neil House as extra care housing?
Councillor Webb.
Good evening, Councillor Tuplin. The answer to your question is no. However, council officers are working closely with Sanctuary Housing to appoint the appointed developers of the extra care scheme for Mackworth. Planning permission has already been secured on the site. Progress has been slower than we would have liked because of uncertainty about the grants available from the Homes and Communities Agency, the HCA, as well as the challenges to the Council's own capital programme from the current financial climate. The Council has used this time to work with Sanctuary and maximise the value for money provided by the scheme so it has the best possible chance of attracting the capital funding required to start on site as soon as possible.
Supplementary, Councillor Tuplin.
So I understand that you agree with me that this is a very important project, and will you continue to push to have the work done as soon as possible?
Councillor Webb.
Councillor Tuplin, I have always been at the forefront of extra care. I have said before that if there was extra care in this city, I would be on the top of the list for it. I will continue. I will continue to promote extra care in the city, as I believe it is a valuable inclusion into care for people in this city.
Councillor Chaplin to Councillor Grimmadale, sporting facilities on Prince Charles Avenue campus.
Could the Cabinet member please tell Council what plans are in place to maintain or replace sporting facilities, including the fitness suite, on Prince Charles Avenue campus, now that the college have vacated the site?
Councillor Webb. Councillor.
Good evening, Councillor Tuplin. Thank you for your question. Despite the college campus relocating to Pride Park, the Council's leisure facilities team will continue to manage the community use of the college sports hall and the artificial turf pitch as part of the current usage agreement between the college and the City Council. The usage agreement is reviewed on an annual basis, and this will continue as part of an overall performance review of the Council's leisure facilities. The Health and Fitness Suite has always been managed and operated by the college, and therefore has not been part of the usage agreement. The college are relocating the fitness equipment to the new college campus at Pride Park to maintain both a teaching and fitness facility for the students. Officers meet regularly with the college to review the usage agreement and will discuss with the college any future plans they have for the fitness centre.
Supplementary, Councillor Chaplin.
Do you agree with me that the people in Mackworth deserve the use of a decent fitness suite?
Councillor Grimmadale.
Well, I don't really think that that's connected with the question. I think that you should really be asking the college that question. And we will continue to discuss with the college any future plans. Thank you.
Next question is from Councillor Hussain to Councillor Webb. Service eligibility criteria. Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Webb, can you please inform the Council of the likely impact on the lives of vulnerable people in Derby of raising the service eligibility criteria to substantial or critical, as you indicated in your report to the Cabinet in July? And how many service users will have their services withdrawn according to your assessment as a result of that?
Councillor Webb.
Good evening, Councillor Hussain. The answer to your question is as follows. Derby City Council is required to apply fair access to care services criteria when deciding eligibility for social care services. In applying this criteria, the Council currently offers direct payments or arranged services where an individual faces at least a moderate risk to their ability to live independently if support is not provided. A moderate risk is defined as when there is or will be an inability to carry out several personal care or domestic routines. Alternatively, or in addition to that, several aspects of learning, social and family roles cannot or will not be sustained. Nationally, 72% of councils provide substantial or critical risk levels only, and many providing a moderate are understood to be reviewing this position. Providing services at the substantial and critical risk levels only means services are provided only when there is or will be an inability to carry out the majority of personal care or domestic routines. Alternatively, or in addition to that, the majority of learning, social and family roles cannot or will not be sustained. There are currently approximately 2,300 people in Derby receiving ongoing community care services, excluding residential care. We estimate that approximately 800 people face moderate risk without support. Any change to the eligibility criteria would require a reassessment of each person before the impact could be precisely quantified, both in terms of numbers and the implications for those individuals. Legally, the Council is able to take its available resources into account when framing its general eligibility criteria. There are 4 significant constraints on this ability. Number 1, service users must have a full individual community care reassessment before any decision can be taken on the withdrawal of services as mentioned above. Number 2, resources can only be taken into account in respect of the eligibility criteria. Where a service is needed, it must be provided. Number 3, resources cannot be the only factor taken into account. The objective needs of the service user are the paramount consideration. Number 4, the Human Rights Act must be taken into account. Particularly relevant are the rights to life, to be free of inhuman or degrading treatment, and the right to respect for private and family life. If Derby chooses to move the eligibility criteria to substantial and critical, then those facing moderate risks would be given advice and, where possible, signposted to alternative services often provided by the voluntary sector and often commissioned through council grant aid. Reassessment would include welfare benefits advice to ensure that income is maximised and that disability-related benefits are being appropriately claimed.
Supplementary, Councillor Hussain.
Councillor Webb, I think you will have no hesitation in confirming that services are currently only offered to people where there is a significant risk to their welfare and well-being. In other words, if they can't have that help from any other source. That is as things are at present. Can you confirm for me or reconfirm for me that as a result of you raising the eligibility criteria, as things stand today, you will lose 800 service users who are dependent upon this council for their welfare and well-being once you've implemented this criteria?
Councillor Webb.
The answer to that question is no. I cannot confirm any numbers at this point in time until eligibility criteria has been established.
Next question is from Councillor Bayliss to Councillor Poulter, Phase 3 of the Alvaston District Centre improvements. Councillor Bayliss, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Chris. With the near completion of Phase 3 of the Alvaston District Centre improvements, could the Council Cabinet Member please confirm the start date for the next phase of the improvements and let the residents of Alvaston know when the new bus shelter, the Blue Peter, will be installed?
Councillor Poulter.
Good evening, Councillor Bayliss. Paul. As you're no doubt aware, the local transport plan funding
has previously been used to carry out the improvement works at Elveston. There remains significant financial pressure upon the local transport plan and other capital funding streams. For the most part, improvements to district centres have relatively minor transport benefits compared with other mainstream transport schemes, although the wider regeneration and community benefits are recognised. Unfortunately, the current phase of works is being funded from Growth Point, and however, funding for the construction of future phases at Elveston District Centre, or for that matter any other district centre, has not yet been identified. In relation to the bus shelter at the Blue Peter Island, a meeting with the supplier Adshell was due to take place on the 9th of September, tomorrow, to agree the shelter location. It is then likely that the shelter will be installed by the end of September, and an additional new shelter on the post office side of Shardlow Road will be installed around the same time. I'm actually able to tell you that we've been able to confirm, having been in contact with Adshell today, that it is still the plan to install both by the end of September.
Supplementary, Councillor Bayliss, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does your answer not clearly demonstrate the current outcome of the Tory Coalition attack on public services? That the district centre in Ulverston will not be completed. This much-needed scheme has been delayed and prevaricated upon by the Liberals, and now we have the residents of Ulverston let down by the Tories with the job half done.
Councillor Poulter.
The answer is no, Paul. At the end of the day, the money simply is not there, cannot be identified at the moment. I don't want to have to say no to you directly, because I'm not writing anything off until after certain financial reviews later on in the year.
Councillor Graves to Councillor Ingle, the condition of Brindley Court, Ellenton. Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Ingle. I know the Cabinet Member is aware of the situation in and around Brindley Court, Allenton, which is part of Alveston Ward. You'll be aware of the gradual deterioration of this block of flats since its disposal by the Council many years ago. It has suffered with severe antisocial behaviour, which continues to have its ups and downs. It is in very poor condition, with almost all flats suffering from rising damp and condensation, with many flats having ill-fitting doors and windows. It has been set alight on more than one occasion. Fire exits are continually blocked by household rubbish, and part of the antisocial activity is structural damage to the public areas within the court. These are just some of the problems the police, the council, local councillors and residents have had to deal with on a week-to-week basis. My question, Councillor Ingle, is one I raised over 2 months ago, and thus far senior council officials have failed to answer, and I quote correspondence I received on the 20th of August this year. I need a full briefing from Housing Standards Officers and Legal Services. This has been arranged for Monday, which will have been the 23rd of August. When this has taken place, I will be able to update you on the current position. My immediate concern about these flats has come from a Type 3 mini asbestos survey, which I have with me, conducted by a professional asbestos surveying company for and on behalf of Waterglen Limited, who own the freehold. Bearing in mind that there are several damaged areas to the ceiling areas on the balcony, public balcony, and other areas that there are several references in the survey that state the asbestos cement sheeting to the soffits and panels should be removed. My question was fairly simple in regard to the responsibility of the Council's Housing Standards Department, who have on several occasions made visits and examined the building. Is there no danger to public health, or does action need taking to make it safe? Now, I know you, Councillor Ingle, to be a fairly straightforward speaking person, so I'm relying on you giving a definite, straightforward answer for and on behalf of my constituents.
Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your straightforward question, Alan. This matter was originally raised with officers by Councillor Graves, and I've been informed it was their intention to present further information to him and other ward councillors as soon as possible. However, there are a number of legal matters that need further clarification, on which we'll be seeking legal counsel. Housing Standards Officers have made several visits to Brindley Court to examine the building and have been in communication with the owners and the new management company about the items of disrepair. They have also spoken to residents and neighbours about these issues. More recently, we have obtained a copy of the asbestos report following the survey that was undertaken. This identifies the presence of asbestos in certain parts of the building and sets out a series of recommendation actions for the owners or management company to undertake. Having studied the report and visited the premises, housing officers are satisfied that there are no risks to the public. However, as the Health and Safety Executive are responsible for health and safety matters at Brindley Court, our understanding is that they will liaise with the owners or management company to agree how these recommendations are dealt with. An action plan for improvements at Brindley Court is being prepared by housing officers and will be published when council advice on the outstanding legal issues is received. Thank you, Anna.
Supplementary, Councillor Graves?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Ingle, can you give me some time frame so that I can inform the constituents whether it will be this year, next year, the year after, whenever you think?
Councillor Ingle.
I would hope this year.
The next question is from Councillor Whitway to Councillor Poulter, removal of the Morlidge bus stop. Councillor Whitway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, having been to the Mackworth State Forum and having witnessed the strength of feeling towards the removal of the Morlidge bus stop for services 28 and 29, is the Cabinet member going to reverse his plans and keep the status quo, especially at a time when seemingly everything that isn't nailed down is being cut for financial reasons, or at least so we're told? Why go ahead with taking away something else that the public holds dear when it isn't going to save the council a penny?
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Councillor Whitby, for the question. Yes, you're right to say I did attend the Mackworth Neighbourhood Forum on Tuesday the 3rd of August, and there I heard from a small number of local residents and noted the concerns that they raised about the relocation of 2 Mackworth Arriva bus services as a consequence of the Morlidge Improvement Project. At that time, I explained in some detail the rationale for the refurbishments to be carried out and informed them that officers were working with the operator to relocate the stops to the bus station on the Morlidge or to another suitable area nearby. This is in fact a commercial decision for the operator, but I understand that Arriva are in the process of submitting a registration change to the traffic commissioners to operate the services from Albert Street from the end of October onwards.
Supplementary, Councillor Whitway.
Yeah, thank you. Does the Cabinet member agree that the public are overwhelmingly against this? The bus company, although they've put this application in, are totally against it. The 3 councillors are totally against it as well. And does he agree that there was no consultation whatsoever with Mackworth residents?
Councillor Poulter.
Absolutely not. I don't agree that the public are overwhelmingly against it. In fact, I've spoken to many more people who are in favour of the refurbishments, and have also got many letters from bus passengers who are concerned about not being able to use the fantastic facilities at the bus station in the upcoming winter.
Councillor Roberts to Councillor Gemmedel, the decline of pool usage following withdrawal of Swim for Life. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Gemmedel. Since the Cabinet agreed to scrap the free swimming for over 60s and children, despite it having been promised until March the 31st, 2011, as quoted in the Derby Evening Telegraph, and the quote read, "Swim for Life offers free passes to anyone aged over 60 and under 16 with the aim of encouraging more people to get into the sport. Swim for Life runs from today until the end of March 2011 and more than 600 under 16s and over 60s have signed up in Derby alone." End of quote. Can you please tell me what, if any, the scale of decline in pool usage has been for children and the over 60s? Thank you.
Councillor Gemmedel.
Good evening, Councillor Roberts. Thank you very much for your question. Prior to the introduction of the Government Free Swimming Initiative, the Council operated a concessionary pricing scheme for a range of specific groups, including children and young people and the 60 and over age group. The concessionary scheme has been reintroduced for these age groups following the recent withdrawal of the Free Swimming Initiative by the Government on the 31st of July 2010. The recent withdrawal of the free swimming initiative means that we are still assessing the impact on swimming attendances. However, if we compare the swimming attendances in August 2009 to 2010, August 2010, we have seen a drop of approximately 5,000 concessionary swimming attendances across the swimming pools. It's important to highlight that this figure, in addition to the 16s and under and the over 60s, also includes disabled and unemployed people who can also swim at a concessionary price under the Council scheme. Over the coming months, the Council will be promoting and increasing awareness of the existing concessionary swimming scheme across all the Council's swimming pools.
Supplementary, Councillor Roberts, please.
Yes, thank you. Could I know that you've reintroduced the reduce scheme. However, that is, in fact, a more expensive scheme than the one that was originally in place, because prices have gone up, of course. But we have a programme, as I understand it, of putting satellite pools around the city, and in view of the I'm unable to say how many as a percentage it is, because 5,000 without knowing the full usage doesn't actually tell the full story. But I'd like, if you could, to give me that figure at some time. And if the usage falls as a result of that decision, can you give me an assurance that we will review the requirements for swimming around the city? And just as an aside at the end, when you go downstairs after the meeting, on the public notice board, you'll see Swim for Life advertised, still advertised, saying you get it free until the 31st of March 2011. So we've taken it away, but we still advertise it on our own notice boards in this council house.
Councillor Grimmadale.
I will. I mean, Councillor Roberts, I will actually look at that. There is a pricing review going on at this moment in time for free swimming. And I was as disappointed as anyone that this was taken off. Thank you.
Councillor Chaplin to Councillor Poulter. Bus stop on the Mowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will withdraw my question since it's largely the same as that Mr. Councillor Whitby just had answered.
So the next one is from Councillor Troop to Councillor Holmes, 1010 campaign. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Matthew. The Liberal Democrat Cabinet committed Derby City Council to the 1010 campaign for councils. Could you say how committed the current Cabinet is to the 1010 campaign and what is being done to reduce energy use across the council?
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Councillor Troop. The Conservative Cabinet remains committed to reducing the impact we have on the environment, along with reducing our energy consumption. Whilst we're committed to 1010, we feel we have to be open and transparent regarding expectations of reductions in this financial year. We will not achieve a 10% reduction. However, with the huge efforts being made by officers, I am very hopeful that we will achieve the target set by 1010 of around 3%. This reduction would be a huge achievement for the Council at the present time. Derby City Council is leading the way in many areas in working to reduce its carbon emissions and energy consumption. I would like to take this opportunity to recognise the commitment from all three political parties over a number of years as a major factor in making this happen. I've made it clear on many occasions that this administration will make common sense decisions based on climate change, regarding climate change and energy that is based on a simple formula of cost payback period over benefit. In these difficult financial times, we will only agree to invest in schemes and projects that are cost-effective in delivering our commitments to carbon reductions and energy usage. Whilst I recognise and take seriously our aspirational targets to reduce carbon emissions, first and foremost we have to focus on targets or actions that the Council has to or will have a legal duty to achieve or to put into place. I would like to give you a small selection of examples to demonstrate how this administration is showing its commitment to reducing emissions and energy consumption. Derby City schools produce around 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions of Derby City Council buildings. Therefore, the engagement of schools in tackling emissions reductions is imperative. And so, we have launched the Derby Schools Carbon Challenge. Schools can request an energy audit to help identify low-cost and no-cost measures to reduce their energy consumption. Some schools, for example, note that those not covered by DECS, or those whose energy consumption is higher than typical for their size, are proactively offered this service. 4 climate change boxes are available for schools to borrow to promote and aid teaching about the subject. Specialist advice is also available on a variety of approaches, including how to involve children, energy reduction campaigns and other available resources. Renewable energy is promoted, and we are helping schools secure funding to develop renewable energy projects such as wind generation. We're also developing a more effective system to engage with the Council's procurement process to bring about targeted and measurable carbon savings. Procurement of goods, works and services make a significant contribution to carbon emissions directly through the use of delivery of the service and indirectly through the manufacture and disposal of goods. By managing procurement at the very first stage, the aim is to prevent energy use and subsequent carbon emissions. A carbon reduction and sustainability toolkit has been put together to help directors and section managers within their services to raise awareness of climate change, sustainability and carbon management issues facing the Council, and to mainstream these as a core business objective. The toolkit provides background information about climate change and sustainability and the key legalisation and drivers behind the need to act. At last night's Cabinet meeting, we approved the Derby City Community Energy Saving Programme, CESP. This requires gas and electricity suppliers and generators to deliver energy-saving measures to domestic consumers in specific low-income areas. Officers working with Councillor Ingle, Cabinet Member for Housing, have moved swiftly to ensure that Derby enters into an agreement to secure one of a limited amount of projects available. Measures will include internal and external wall insulation, replacement of old and inefficient boilers, provision of loft insulation, draft proofing and energy advice. This will contribute greatly to our overall drive to tackle climate change and energy usage across the city. And I say again, these are just a small selection of the actions we are taking and the projects being taken forward. Thank you.
Supplementary, Councillor Troop.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe street lighting in the city uses about 18% of the energy across the city. I wonder if you could tell us what role you see the reduction of energy used in street lighting playing in the broader picture.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. As you know, the administration did make a decision not to proceed with the £3 million management investment in that area. However, Councillor Poulter is currently working on an alternative proposal, and I'm sure at the right time we can certainly liaise with you and give you a full briefing on where we're going with that. Thank you.
Next question is from Councillor Winter to Councillor Williams, School Transport. Councillor Winter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Williams. Can you tell me, have any decisions been made regarding the Faith School transport issue?
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Winter, for your question. The Council's budget, approved on 2nd March 2009, included the proposal to withdraw the Council's discretionary transport provision that was provided predominantly for children who lived less than 2 or 3 miles from school. Following the above decision, a local commercial bus operator, Notts and Derby, has since provided commercial services to St Benedict and Derby Moor from September 2009, along very similar routes to the former council routes. These commercial services effectively replaced the former council services, and children have been able to pay a daily fare to use these buses. Members agreed that the remaining discretionary transport would continue to be provided for a total of just over 40 pupils attending St George's, St John Fisher and St Joseph's Primary Schools and Benrose Secondary School until the end of 2009-10 summer term, when it would be phased out. This decision has now been implemented and no further discretionary transport is being provided. Members also requested that officers should continue to develop the sustainable school travel strategy that looks to promote alternative travel modes, Over the past year, resources have been focused on helping those parents and carers who have been affected by the changes and the need to help to plan their alternative arrangements. The changes have been predominantly to support walking, cycling or car sharing to school by providing personalised travel plans to each of the children affected by the withdrawal of discretionary bus services and piloting web-based sustainable travel information for each of the affected schools.
Supplementary, Councillor Winter, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can you tell me whether this has been successful? With the alternative transport, with the walking, cycling and other forms of transport rather than buses?
Councillor Williams.
Well, obviously, I would have to go out and find out. At the moment, I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I have also not been approached by any parent, pupil or carer, or in fact school, to say that the plans haven't been successful.
Next question is from Councillor Nater to Councillor Poulter, tree strategy. Councillor Nater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Councillor Poulter. Over the past few months, I have a lot of complaints about trees, the wrong types of trees being planted in wrong areas. I understand the important benefits trees provide, their importance in providing a sustainable environment, reducing pollution and aiding climate adaptation. But trees have a major impact on people and elderly people and disabled people's lives. This certainly applies to Wilson Avenue in Blagrooves Ward. I also understand the Council are currently in the process of drafting a tree strategy. Can you tell me and the residents of this city, which is a city-wide problem, when the tree strategy will be completed? And also, have the councillors consulted on this, please?
Councillor Poulter.
Good evening, Councillor Nater. The current process of drafting the tree strategy requires consultation with a number of council departments. This is because the overall strategic management of all council-owned trees is involved. It's also required to support many of the council's other existing strategies. Guidance for at a national level is currently also being drafted by the Department of Local Communities, and it would therefore be appropriate to ensure that any strategy considers and supports this advice also. So in that way, I'm not able to give you when the actual strategy will be completed. It will be dependent on that guidance. It is proposed that when this internal consultation and the guidance has been received, the strategy will then go out to public consultation, at that point allowing members and residents of Derby to have their input into the strategy. In the meantime, the way forward to address the issues that you refer to on Wilson Avenue would be on an individual basis in line with the current tree management policy which was adopted in 2007. The arboricultural section has offered to attend a site meeting with you to look at the current issues on Wilson Avenue.
Supplementary, Councillor Nater.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Poulter. I'm a bit disappointed with the response. I was actually expecting the tree strategy to be completed so we can move forward. Quite clearly, I'm sure the other councillors will admit to it. You know, trees have been a major problem all over the city. And really, it was quite clear. Just wanted to address some of the issues that our elderly people and disabled people are facing. So even if it's on an individual basis, could we please look at the matter even on a case-to-case basis rather than letting people, you know, year on year having this problem? And they do have a problem, and we owe it to the people of the city to look after their needs. Thank you.
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The answer is the same, really, Councillor Nater. At the end of the day, it makes sense to have the national guidance before we formulate our final strategy, and the offer is there from the officers to attend and visit any trees and look at the situation where there's any existing problems.
The final question is from Councillor Skelton to Councillor Ingle, future of Derby Homes. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ingle. Within the next 6 months, a decision will be taken by Cabinet as to whether the management of council housing remains with Derby Homes or comes back into the council. When this comes to Cabinet in November, will you be expressing a preference on the options and then consulting, but allowing people to give their views on both options? or will you be making a decision and then asking people what they think of that decision?
Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, Ruth. It would be inappropriate of me to second-guess how Cabinet might respond to the issue before we have seen the outcome of the evaluations of the proposed options. If Cabinet considers there is a compelling case for a particular option, then it may make a recommendation to consult on. If there is no compelling case, Cabinet may consult tenants on all options without expressing a preference.
Supplementary, Councillor Skelton.
I think I'd just like to ask Councillor Ingle, he is aware that in the past the the Court of Appeal has given, more than guidance, made decisions on what constitutes proper consultation. And consultation, for example, they say does have to happen when the proposals are still at a formative stage, and also that the results of that consultation have to be conscientiously taken into account when coming to a decision. So I would like him to bear those in mind, and when that comes to Cabinet, is he willing to do that?
Councillor Ingle.
Yeah.
The members to the Cabinet members. Moving along to item 9, to consider the following minutes and recommendations of the Council Cabinet dated 27th July and 7 September 2010, requiring the approval of the Council. Minute 44/10, Capital Outturn Report. Anybody wants to speak on that? 48/10, Contract and Financial Procedure Matters Report. 64/10, Contract and Financial Procedure Matter Report. Now, the motion is to...
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Bolton.
Document 9D, page 3, 3.2, a matter close to my heart. It mentions the Chaddesden Park Library, but the bullet point mentions 1.1 million have been rephased, but I assumed from a meeting I had earlier this week with the head of libraries it should be 1.2 million, so the money's slipping away already. Can I just have it confirmed that the Chaddesden Library has got a ring-fenced amount of 1.2 million, because that was what I was told on Monday?
Councillor Grimmadale.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just a phasing issue. There's still 1.2 million ring fence, so I can confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, with that, can I ask Councillor Jennings to move the motion to approve the above minutes?
Mr Mayor, can I move that the minutes are approved as printed, please?
Any against? Is carried. Item 10, to consider the following minutes and recommendations of the Taxi Licensing and Appeals Committee dated 14th July 2010, requiring the approval of the Council. 48/09. Councillor Bayliss.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments, Mr Mayor, regarding licensing generally. 3 points I want to make. The first thing is that some of my members have been seriously inconvenienced by the fact that a meeting was organised at last minute, then rescheduled, and then the chair of that particular committee didn't bother to turn up. And I know some Conservative members have commented at the time. I just wanted to point that out. Secondly, I want to point something out and put on the public record regarding our members' attendance at licensing committees. In previous years, the Labour group has done more than its fair share, sometimes doing 20 attendances a year for each member. Since this council decided to take away the responsibility allowances for vice chairs on that committee in the way it did, our group has decided that our members will only attend 4 during the year. And I know members have been asked individually, and I know the chair of the group has been approached by officers to see if our members will attend more. The answer is no. And the third thing I'd like to mention, we would agree this motion.
Else wishes to speak on this? Councillor Hurd.
Mr Mayor, as chair of that committee, I did send my apologies. I had a responsibility also to my forum, and as there was only one other member there, it made sense that I went. It was a sensible decision to have this meeting arranged when it was. It was unfortunate that it clashed with the forum that I was at, and it's unfortunate it clashed with other dates. It's not that I didn't want to go, I wasn't able to go, and that's just the way it was, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Okay, can then I ask Councillor Hurd to move the motion?
Move it as printed, Mr Mayor, please.
All those in favour, please show. Any against? Is carried. Item 11 is to consider the following minutes and recommendations of the Governance Committee dated 28th July 2010. The minute 04/10 new executive arrangements consultation. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was at that committee, and because of the way that the minutes are presented here, it doesn't record that actually I had my vote recorded against the recommendations. The reason for that was that, and the irony hasn't escaped me regarding what Councillor Skelton has just said, the consultation effort. I think that one of the things we ought to do if we're doing a consultation about the way this council is governed is have a meaningful conversation with the citizens out there. I know that there's two groups on this council have made a decision. I've got my own opinion regarding the way we should move forward in terms of the cabinet member, leader and the ceremonial mayor. I think that we should have a debate because we need to make sure that what we do reflects the wishes and aspirations of the citizens out there. But this is tokenism, I'm afraid. And it's quite interesting to see which way Councillor Skelton will vote on this because, in my opinion, the consultation is frankly meaningless in the way we've set it out. And our group will be abstaining on this particular motion. Thank you.
Anybody else just wish to speak on this one? Councillor Jennings.
Mr Mayor, I'd actually like the opportunity to introduce the item before we actually debate it. And I think Councillor Bayliss has actually missed the point. We're not here to this particular piece in the papers isn't about the detail of the consultation. It's about whether or not we need the extra council meeting that we agreed at a previous council meeting to have in December of this year to take the decision on the new executive arrangements. And the fact is, Mr Mayor, that this paper is about saying that we don't need that extra meeting in December because we think that we will be able to manage it within normal business in the November meeting of full council. So I recommend to the Chamber that we approve this motion because it is simply saving the authority money in not having an extra meeting that we don't need.
Okay, now then could I ask Councillor Jennings to move the motion, please?
Can I move the motion as printed, Mr Mayor, please?
All those in favour, please show. Any against? Is carried. Item 12 is to consider a report of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services as monitoring officer concerning proposed amendment to the Constitution. Councillor Jennings.
Mr Mayor, thank you. This item is about tidying up some of the strands of the workload of the Personnel Committee that was disbanded earlier this year and really addressing some of the issues that they used to deal with. I did have some concerns raised by the trade unions about this paper and quite rightly they had some particular concerns about the wording contained in the report, and they came to see me along with Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Allen and various other representatives, other members of the Cabinet as well this afternoon. And when we looked at the document, they were right. Some of the wording in there is confusing and could lead to a false impression of what the document is all about. So I'd just like to clarify for the record that the trade unions were worried that paragraph 2.6 They were worried that the right of the unions to take collective disputes to the Corporate Joint Committee, which is chaired by a Cabinet member, might be affected if members supported these recommendations in the report. The wording in paragraph 2.6 of the report is, on reflection, not particularly helpful, in that it looks back to changes that were made to the Constitution by the Council last May. This report makes no change to the position regarding the handling of disputes with the unions. They will still be able to take their concerns to CJC and to discuss them with the Cabinet member with responsibility for personnel issues. The wording in paragraph 2.7 accurately reflects government guidance. There is no further clarification on this point in the guidance, and so we need to take it in the spirit in which we think it is given. And we feel that the guidance means that members should not be involved in setting the rates of pay for individual employees. We do not think it precludes the Cabinet member, however, from chairing the CJC. So, with those points in mind, Mr. Mayor, the particular recommendations contained within the report relate to the devolvement of responsibility to officers for staffing structural issues and nothing to do with employee rights. It's absolutely nothing to do with collective agreements, negotiating agreements, individual disputes or collective disputes. It is solely about structural changes to the organisation, which I'm sure you're all aware we are going through a massive transformation programme. And the current limit that was set for the Personnel Committee was delegated at £100,000, which quite clearly is not relevant in the terms of the transformation programme. So it is a technical amendment to the Constitution to allow us to get on with the transformation programme and to allow officers to delete those posts, which they are currently doing in the least painful way by removing vacant posts, and we need to get on with the job in hand. So I would ask members to support the recommendations, Mr. Mayor, and I move the motion as printed.
Councillor Willis.
Yes, I was at the meeting at 4 o'clock. I hear what the council leader has said, but frankly I'm not that assured or reassured. The reason for that is that the trade unions, there's only one there, it was Unison. The other trade unions hadn't been involved in this, and one of the things they did actually ask is whether or not it could be referred back to the corporate CJC for further consultation before it came back to council. And I certainly think from what I've heard that that's what we ought to do. Having heard what the leader said, I propose therefore an amendment to the recommendation to do just that.
Mr. Mayor, that amendment appears to be in order, so it would read then to approve the amendment to the Constitution set out in Appendix 2, except Section 2 be referred back to the next CJC before being agreed by Council.
Is there any seconder? Okay. You want to speak, Councillor Bayliss, on the amendment?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll be brief. The trade unions hadn't picked up the fact that there was a change to this particular part of the Constitution, and I expect most of the members of the Council haven't even read that bit, but I have. I think that there is sufficient ambiguity for them to be alarmed, which is why they asked for a meeting, and to be fair, the Leader of the Council gave them that meeting. I think there should be proper and further consultation at the CJC and a considered discussion, and this shouldn't be railroaded through Council in this particular way. I certainly think it should have been discussed before it got here, to be perfectly honest with you, but it hasn't. And therefore, that's why I'm proposing the amendment and the refer back. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Roberts, you want to speak? You second the motion? Okay. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, quite frankly, I can't support this motion because this amendment, because I had the meeting with the union. Yes, Unison were the only union there, but they were all invited. Unison, I believe, are the biggest union. They left completely happy. They left with the understanding that I would make the statements this evening and that would address their concerns. They also left with a promise that we would be consulting them at CJC in the near future. So the amendment to me is a nonsense. It does, the recommendation does not affect employees' terms or conditions of service. It's a simple fact that it does not. So the amendment is not relevant in my opinion and will not be supported by my group.
Councillor Carr, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I too will oppose this amendment. I don't think it adds anything. As Councillor Jennings alluded to, these conditions are negotiated by and large for most people through the national terms and conditions. I've gone through the wording very carefully, and the way these two bits of Section 2 add to the Constitution completely enshrine the employees' rights, which are normally, as Councillor Jennings alluded to, done through the CJC. And in fact, if I can read you as it's put down there, it's not very clear, but what it actually says, if the motion goes through as printed rather than as amended, it will say the Chief Executive and Corporate Directors will be responsible for appointing, managing, disciplining and dismissing all employees within their departments subject to complying with, and the bullet point we're adding is, officer employment and procedure rules, which are negotiated through the CJC. So therefore I urge members to reject this amendment and deal with the motion as printed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was at that meeting and my understanding of the position of Unison was as Councillor Jennings described when he gave an undertaking to explain the position about the wording on 2.6 and 2.7. They both agreed that they were satisfied with that explanation and that the items in the appendix were procedural. So I think the amendment is superfluous and we'll be supporting the original recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you very much. One of the difficulties with this amendment, as I see it, and nobody seems to have touched on it, is the fact that it's yet another diminution in the standards that councillors, elected representatives, can expect to be either consulted on or be involved in. And it does take away the position of elected representatives to have that involvement as shown in paragraph 3.2. Also, it adds a bullet point on officer employment procedure rules, and I've no doubt one or two people who are going to vote on this might even have read it. Yeah, I know Mike Carr's read it, and I know Paul Bayliss has read it, and I know that I've read it. Anyone like to put their hand up who else has read it? Goodness me, look at that. There isn't even half of this council who are putting their hand up to say that they've read it. And yet, they're going to be prepared to vote on it. One of those strange anomalies that happens when amendments like this come forward. But we had a personnel committee that carried out, I thought, a decent job. And before that, we had appeals committees and we had councillors looking at reorganisational changes. And who is going to do that now? Not an elected representative, because we are just about, if you vote as you, both your leader, well, your deputy leader and your leader has said, that you're going to vote this through. And all that this amendment asks for is, if you want to do it, is to give it a stay of execution until you've really looked at what the meaning of it is. And I strongly suggest that what you're doing is voting away the rights of elected representatives to be involved in what are major and extremely significant changes in the way this council operates. And if you listen to what the Leader of the Council said about the changes that are taking place, £100,000 doesn't touch it. I did propose to my group leader that we should say it should be £250,000, but that didn't find favour either. And if what we do tonight is vote through changes that mean elected representatives in this council give away yet another basic right that we have, then I, for one, will be disappointed. I see a gradual reduction in the role of what are laughingly known as frontline councillors, and every frontline councillor who votes for this tonight will vote away one of the few opportunities that he or she has to take and participate in what goes on in this council. And occasionally, you know, you have to go to disputes committees and various other things and stand up and be counted. And I know that in the past, members of this council have fulfilled a very excellent role in participating in the management structure of this organisation, and it's been an important role because it has seen changes that sometimes our managers miss. They don't always have their feet on the ground where councillors do. And while sometimes, many times, they do, and they're not very often wrong, I'm not saying they're wrong all the time at all, but there are occasions when some critical councillor can point out the flaws in an argument where our professional managers fail. And I think that we at least owe ourselves a period of reflection before we make that decision, and I'll just appeal to you to vote through this amendment, because that all it does is give you a period of reflection.
Any more speakers before I ask Councillor Bayliss to wind it up? Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I can't help thinking it's scare tactics, to be quite honest. The Council has already approved a strategy to reduce the workforce, and now officers have to implement it. Elected members, therefore, have clearly set the strategy and have been consulted on the overall proposal. The amendment allows the officers to get on with the task set by councillors, elected members. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bayliss to wind it up, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I mean, as Councillor Roberts points out, what I'm asking this council to do is simply send it to the CJC so that all unions can actually have the reassurances that they duly deserve, and they are representing the people who work for us. We're not throwing this out. It would come back at the next time, and providing that consultation has gone through, this group would probably support it. That's all I'm asking. Just a stay of execution and a consultation that should be done properly, and it should have been done beforehand. Thank you.
Okay, now on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. All those against, please show. For 21 against, the amendment is lost. 31 against, the amendment is lost. Moving back to the substantive motion, all those in favour of the motion, please show.
Can we just check with Councillor Berry whether or not he voted for that?
All those against, please show.
against. 34, 15 against.
34, 15 against. The motion is carried. Moving on to item 13, to consider a report of the Strategic Director of Resources concerning urgent non-executive decision made by the Chief Executive. Councillor Jennings to move.
Mr Mayor, can I move the motion as printed, please?
All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Now we move on to item 14, which is the
just
notice.
Just as a point of clarification, Mr Mayor,
Sorry.
I'm just wondering, for future reference, why it is necessary to check with a member whether they voted or not. Why aren't people watching?
To chair as best we can, but sometimes members put their hands up and then they put them down again. So as we go along, it's not always obvious.
Okay, item 14, notice of motion. Councillor Bolton to move, Councillor Bayliss to second. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I must express the Labour Group's thanks to the staff in the Building Schools for the Future and the School Place Planning team. There are 8 of them in the team who have worked tirelessly, fastidiously and diligently on this project over the last 4 years, to have the project suddenly scrapped overnight by the Tory and Liberal Democrat coalition government. Secondly, a brief insight into the scheme before I move on to be more specific about Leesbrook Community Sports College. The Building Schools for the Future project was the biggest ever capital spend in this city, all brought about by our previous Labour government, to transform education facilities in our secondary schools and invest in our young people in the sum of £205 million capital investment. When I was the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, I launched the Building Schools for the Future programme at Pride Park on the 19th of June 2007. We had the Toyota suite overflowing with every head teacher from the secondary schools in Derby, young people from the school councils, our partner agencies, governors, parents and carers, Derby College, the Learning and Skills Council, the union representatives and various leading business figures who wanted to participate in this wonderful project. They were all there to support it. It was a great day with workshops full of ideas, especially from the young people themselves, with their vision for a new learning environment. And can I say that the School Council at Leesbrook took full involvement in that. And there was a buzz around the school, and all the school councils took their initiatives back to their secondary schools to relay this great project within their schools. I then went on to chair for the next couple of years all the Building Schools for the Future project board meetings, plus the various meetings in between. And at no time did either of the opposing political parties question the scheme or show any objection to it. I introduced cabinet reports, attended the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and held individual cabinet member meetings, and at no time was there any opposition to the way the project was being planned. So what went wrong after the general election this May to have the whole project scrapped? Derby's Building Schools for the Future programme has been perhaps the only one of the few programmes that has remained on target, having met every required milestone, and this is the thanks we get. It's scrapped overnight. Now moving on to the specifics of Leesbrook Community Sports College in Chaddesden Ward, the secondary school that is in the worst condition in this city, and that is why we are paying particular attention to Leesbrook, and I'm sure there are other secondary schools in this city where improvements can be made, but Leesbrook literally is on its last legs. It's served its useful life, and I'm sure that pigeon agrees with me. I've written 4 times to Michael Gove, the Secretary of State, 2 emails and 2 letters, 2 in July, 2 in August. To my final letter, I did get a response, but not from Michael Gove, from one of his deputies. It was a cut and pasted letter that clearly shows they need some education down in the education department, because it's been cut and pasted and they've totally lost the thread in the penultimate paragraph. But the top and bottom of it is that Michael Gove could not be bothered to respond to my letter or emails, and he has refused to come and visit. It says at the end of the letter, the Minister of State, due to his heavy diary commitments, he will not be able to visit your school. I've tried for my constituents, and I've tried for the children and young people that I serve in Chaddesden Ward. He did not even send another letter saying somebody else would attend from the department. The visit has totally been turned down. And how do I explain that to the children and young people, and the teachers indeed, who work so hard at Leesbrook? It is also regrettable that our present strategic director for children and young people did not find time to visit the school either. I have done my homework on the number of students at the school in the year groups, but the number of pupils, including the post-16, are 1,189 students. The number of staff is nearly 200, and that includes teaching staff, support staff, teaching assistants, admin staff, technicians, midday supervisors and cleaners. So we've got 200 staff approximately and 1,189 pupils. Now, predominantly, the breakdown of the wards where the pupils come from, obviously the majority, 46%, is Chaddesden Ward. Then Oakwood Ward, 32%. And then we can go down the list. There's Derwent, Alveston, Arboretum, Sinfin, Normanton, Spondon, Darley, Abbey, Alistry and Littleover. So nearly every ward is sending a pupil to Leesbrook School. But as I said in my opening remarks, the majority of them are Chaddesden and Oakwood. But I just wanted to clearly show you the statistics that I've obtained from the principal indicating the numbers that attend Leesbrook School. I actually went to visit again last Thursday morning to speak to the principal and to tour the 10 blocks. And there are 10 blocks on the Leesbrook site. It's like a small village, really. There are blocks A down to J, and they're all delivering certain aspects of the curriculum. I would like now the officers to distribute the photographs that I've had taken regarding the school conditions. The Labour group, I think, already have them. I have asked the Mayor's permission to do this, and I've been clarified that I've got the go-ahead. So I'm now going to distribute a variety of photographs that will show you the state
Mr. Mayor, can I
of the
just
Leesbrook building.
take this opportunity while those photographs are being distributed to ask for a point of information to be clarified, please? Councillor Bolton, during your statement so far, you've mentioned that the strategic director hadn't visited Leesbrook School. Is that our current interim strategic director, or the strategic director that is now suspended that you're talking about? Okay, thank you.
I'm not going into any more details about that, Councillor Jennings, because there is an investigation pending. But I have cleared that legally, and that is where I'm stopping that paragraph. All right? I think by now everyone should have a photograph showing the various states of Leesbrook Community Sports College. They are taken from the various blocks. As I said, there are 10 blocks. And at the bottom of the photograph that you have, and do swap and change them amongst your colleagues because they're all different, it shows you the commentaries are focusing in on the electricity on site, the structural defects on site, the asbestos on site, and the leaking roofs. So each photograph that you have should indicate the state of the building, giving those various commentaries. And I'd just like to run through them briefly, because the electricity supply cables sited on exterior of buildings across flat roofs because there are asbestos in the ceiling voids. This is common throughout the school site and across the main entrance. So those of you who have got the main entrance site that says welcome, you will see the cables. The electricity substation, positioned outside a building on a route used by students to access the playing fields for PE lessons and at break and lunchtime. The electricity supply cables for adjoining block suspended between blocks rather than underground, again because of the asbestos. The structural defects, the fascias on some of the buildings are loose. The brick chimney, there is a brick chimney photograph, has a crack running down its structure, and it's uncertain how long that structure will be there for. And also the brick fascias regularly fall off. This is fenced off because it's a serious health and safety hazard. Quite clearly, we don't want to close the school, so we have to have regular health and safety inspections, and also the asbestos has to be monitored on a regular basis. The sports hall, again, shows structural cracks down one wall. Building J, the building foundations are crumbling, and the wood beneath the plastic-coated window frames are rotting away, leaving only a thin plastic frame to hold the glass panel doors. Also, the panels are moving amongst the clasp buildings, which are causing of great concern. But the metal holding them in place is corroding, and water is overflowing in the pipes over the entrance. The staircases around the whole site are wearing out. There is a particular photograph showing this. The treads have already had to be replaced in several areas, and you'll see particularly on that photograph just how unkept the school looks. It really is a photograph that really shows the dowdiness of the building. Moving on to the asbestos. There are loose asbestos behind most of the glass panels. You'll see that on one particular picture they can't open the windows. It says do not open because of the possibility of asbestos. The glass panes are backed by asbestos panels, so they've had to be blocked in. This really isn't the right environment for our young people to be learning in, and hopefully those photographs that you've seen just show you the disquiet that certainly I have as a Chaddesden Ward councillor, and hopefully the other Chaddesden Ward councillors have got the same. The leaking roofs, you'll see from the photographs, Block J, in wet weather, the water pours into the block, making it unsafe to use. So that block, just sometimes, if we've had a bad spell of rain, they cannot use Block J at all. The drama studio also has been badly affected by the leaking roof. And those of you with the water supply photographs, you'll see that the water tanks are leaking and can't be mended because of the asbestos lagging. So there's no hot water in the science block at all. And again, for the corroded working, the toilets have had to be closed because of the lack of hot water. Hopefully that encapsulates, Mr Mayor, the poor condition of Leesbrook Community Sports College. And I could only show you how serious it is by bringing those photographs along this evening so that you can see for yourselves the dire straits that the staff and pupils at Leesbrook Community Sports College are in. And of course, trying to work in an environment like that is not only worrying for the students and young people, it's worrying for the staff as well, and the people who try to maintain the building so that it is a good form of environment for our young people to learn. Incidentally, work should have been carried out. Mr. Dover told me last week at the meeting, work should have been carried out to the leaking roofs over the summer holidays, and they were let down. The work hasn't been done as promised at the school. So that's going to exacerbate the situation when autumn and winter sets in. The photographs that you've just seen will look even worse if I go back and get more photographs at the end of this year. They deserve an excellent learning environment, as do the staff who deliver the education. This would have been carried out if the programme had continued. A brand new school for September 2012 if this project had not been scrapped. This government, our present government, has stopped it happening. Quite simply, this motion requests the Minister of State to visit Leesbrook himself to see for himself what I've showed you in photograph format. It's no doubt possible that we can go down to the House of Commons and visit him, but I don't quite see the value of that in his lavish office at Westminster, with no doubt, tasteful decoration and a shag pile carpet. Let's get him to Leesbrook and see the floors that they've got there. We want him to see the cracked floors, the broken windows, the boarded up windows, the windows that cannot be opened, the leaking classrooms, the asbestos-filled corridors, and the bodged-up decorating, patching and making do repairs, and we could go on and on. The school, incidentally, does not fit the DDA criteria, so that's another worry for the staff at the school. My constituents and the children and young people that I represent feel let down, disappointed, frustrated and annoyed that this coalition government has scrapped the £22.3 million project with no consideration for the 200 staff, the 1,189 pupils, along with their parents and carers. A new school would also bring added benefits to the local community, as they could use the building too for community groups, community meetings, and take a pride and ownership in it. I wonder what BSF really stands for with our present government. Backward, short-sighted and foolish. Please support my motion.
Councillor Bayliss.
Formally second, Mr Mayor, reserve my right to speak later.
Mr Mayor, I have an amendment, and I think Mr Dunning has the paper.
Has the amendment been received?
Yes.
Has every member received a copy of the amendment? Okay. I'll just give a minute or so for you to go through it. Could I then ask Councillor Allen to speak on your amendment, please? Is that being seconded? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Councillor Bolton has made an exceedingly good case for Leesbrook. The strength of my motion is to say some of the features of those photographs and the comments she's made about Leesbrook could be applied to every secondary school in Derby, with some exceptions, those that have recently been rebuilt. But I'm sure they will have their maintenance problems already as well. Like her, I chaired the BSF board for 2 years. We had staff, students, staff across the departments of the council, not just in CYP, working on that project. We had partners, we had the diocesan representatives, a wide range of people came and met on that board. And Councillor Bolton is quite right. Nobody objected because the scheme was fundamentally the right thing to do. The problem with it and what went wrong is not, as Councillor Bolton says, what went wrong after the election. It's what went wrong before the election. And that's reflected in the second paragraph of my amendment. Alistair Darling himself promised after the election that there would be reduced government expenditure, but he didn't tell us where his cuts were going to fall. We are talking about BSF, and we're talking about why. We inherited a need in the coalition government to reduce expenditure. The need was declared by the previous administration. There is no doubt about that, and there should be no argument about it. It's on record. The money has gone. Sarah and colleagues, please stop interrupting and listen for a bit, please. The problem is that we have schools that are decaying. And while it is a coalition government, and the Conservative group and the Labour group are parts of that party in coalition government, it does not mean that I agree with everything that the coalition does. And I've said before, the scrapping of the BSF programme was an absolute shame. I have conducted correspondence myself, Sarah, with Michael Gove, and I've even met him face to face. I don't want to pull any favours there, but I have actually spoken to the man. I didn't change his mind, I didn't expect to, but I have told him what I feel. I understand other councillors have written to him to tell him what they feel. So you make the point very well that BSF and all that it was intending to do was excellent. It was cumbersome, it was arduous, it was over-expensive, it was over-administratively blown, and that could have been thinned down a lot. But we delivered it, as you rightly say, and credit goes to the staff, and I've given them credit for that in the past. But what will a BSF do apart from renovate Leesbrook School? It would have renovated and provided better learning environments for every child in the city, across every ward, across every secondary school. It doesn't sit comfortably with me for the motion to say, let's only promote Leesbrook. On the TV this morning, I didn't see it, but I'm told about it, there was a TV crew in Littleover pointing out similar deficiencies in Littleover School. Some of you may have seen that. They could have gone to any secondary school and found deficiencies. The problem is not that Leesbrook is being missed out, the problem is that all schools are being missed out. So I have no problem whatsoever in supporting the thrust of Sarah's motion, but I think it ought to say all schools in Derby and not just Leesbrook. There are benefits that have been rehearsed in other places. The learning environment is just one of the benefits that this would bring to Derby. The benefits to the local economy, the building industry, the environmental benefits. We heard about the impact that schools have on carbon footprints. Unfortunately, their contribution doesn't count to 1010, but this would have done an awful lot to help the reduction in carbon and promotion of green issues in schools. What we have at the moment is back on the books over £50 million worth of backlog in maintenance that BSF would have removed. So I have no problem at all in lobbying government most sternly to have that reinstated for Derby, and I urge Council to support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, you want to speak? Okay. Councillor Rapton.
It's interesting, isn't it, that when we're faced with the realities of the policies of this Conservative Lib Dem government, understandably, and it's only this side of the chamber that raised this issue, or we wouldn't have the backtracking from other councillors. But having said that, I welcome 3/4 of this actual motion. But the councillor from the Liberal side is quite wrong, where he says that Labour was proposing to actually shelve or not find the finances for BSF. That's quite wrong and quite misleading. If he were prepared to slightly amend this amendment, I think we could get agreement in the interest of Derby. But in where we stand at this moment in time, in supporting what I would want to support is the original motion, and I want to contrast it with the Conservative Lib Dem Council's decision to spend £14 million of scarce taxpayers' money on this refurbishment of their own offices, thus ensuring that they have plush, watertight and warm premises, yet they'll deny thousands of the city's school children the opportunity of refurbishing their schools and condemn them to receive their education in premises that are not even fit for the 20th century, let alone the 21st century. And you've seen the photographs. And it's not just Leesbrook, it's many, many schools in this city. The Conservatives and the Lib Dems had a choice. They could have delayed the refurbishment of these premises, and they could have argued against Michael Gove's cruel retrograde proposals. And if any of them had a shred of honour, they would follow the example of the Deputy Conservative leader of Sandwell Council and now resign and join us in standing up for the children in this city and put pressure on their government to reverse these grossly unfair, short-sighted and regressive policy proposals. If they are not prepared to do the honourable thing, and we have some inclination that maybe the Liberals, if they're prepared to join us in supporting the main thrust of Councillor Bolton's policy, we will find a way forward. But certainly we've actually shown about choice in this city, where the choices lie, whether it's before spending money on this council or spending money on schools. We certainly know that who we support and the policies that are important, and that's making sure that we put pressure on Michael Gove and this coalition government to reverse these cruel retrograde policies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, I'm not going to stand here and defend a government policy on building schools for the future. One of my roles, as defined by statute under the Children's Act 2004, which underpins every Child's Matter Green Paper, is championing the interests of children, young people and their families within the local authorities area. I would like to support this motion, but I'm even happier to support the amended motion, as it takes into account all 18 Derby schools and not just the Leesbrook school. I am not afraid to stand here and say publicly that I think the government have got it wrong on its Derby Building Schools for Future decisions. Due to the very hard work of the Building Schools for Future team and their diligence, as Councillor Bolton rightly said, we were only 8 weeks away from financial closure. Plans, legal documents, architecture documents, excuse me, can you be quiet, please, while I'm speaking? Thank you. I'll start that paragraph again. We're only 8 weeks away from financial closure. Plans, legal documents, architectural documents, etc. are all ready to go and ready to be signed off. So it is my opinion that more thought should have been put into individual authorities' positions in the process, and this should have been considered more by the government. So what have I been doing to try and change the government's mind? As you all know from the previous council meeting, I have written to Michael Gove to try and persuade him to at least include Leesbrook in the agreed schemes. His reply confirmed that Leesbrook Community Sports College will not continue to be part of the BSF programme. Since then, I have been lobbying him via phone call, email and personal letter to try and get him to change his mind. The Chief Executive and I have also asked for a slot in Michael Gove's diary so that we can visit him and lobby him on the whole Derby Schools Capital programme. We are still awaiting a slot. I have lobbied all 3 city MPs. I have also signed petitions, joined social networking campaigns and encouraged fellow councillors to lobby on behalf of the schools in their wards. The only glimmer of hope from the government at this stage is that they are reviewing the school's capital programme in October, and we should find out if any of our schools will benefit from this in due course. If not, then we as an authority will have some very serious capital investment issues to consider. So in conclusion, Mr Mayor, some people may say I'm a NIMBY by supporting this amendment and motion, but I feel that it is my duty to the children of Derby to do everything in my power to try and get them the best schools possible.
Councillor Higginbottom. No, you don't want to speak. Okay. The next one I've got Councillor Tuplin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. After I retired from full-time teaching in 2006, I spent quite a lot of time working as a supply teacher in many of the schools in and around Derby. What did I find? I found that all of the schools I went to do an excellent job with the resources that they've got available. But they often struggle with inadequate buildings which have suffered from a lack of maintenance for many years. Many of you will have seen Littleover School on the national television this morning, and it's suffering from leaking roofs, poor insulation and lack of facilities for wheelchairs, not unsimilar to the problems that Councillor Bolton described at Leesbrook. It's not our job this evening to apportion blame for this sorry state of affairs, but I do urge all councillors to support the amendment which aims to improve facilities for all children in Derby. And while we're thinking about it, not only will better buildings improve the learning environment for our children, but it's also got a very good chance of reducing their carbon footprint. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do agree with some of what Councillor Allen said, and I'm sure all of us do. This is a much wider issue than Leesbrook. We have many secondary schools in our city which are deserving of this additional investment. I'm going to speak from on behalf of children and young people in my own ward, Derwent, many of whom do attend Leesbrook Community Sports College, and I'm speaking up for them. The state of the buildings, as Councillor Bolton has very ably pointed out to us with the photographs and how she's described the condition, is very poor. No one can disagree with that. The college was due to be rebuilt under Labour's Building Schools for the Future plans, and despite what's been said, there were no plans for Labour to withdraw the funding for building schools for the future. The state of the buildings at Leesbrook is in stark contrast to the high-quality, state-of-the-art facilities enjoyed at Da Vinci College, which is in Derwent Ward. High-quality surroundings combined with excellent leadership and teaching has resulted in the best-ever GCSE results at Da Vinci, and I congratulate staff and students at Da Vinci for their achievements. So how can this council and the Condem government justify such a huge difference in the physical educational environment for children living in Derwent Ward? Educational achievement at Leesbrook is excellent, but please don't underestimate the effect of having pride in a high quality school building, the effect that that can have on raising achievements even further. The children at Da Vinci, since they've had their new building, have taken a real pride in their surroundings, and that has contributed massively to the improving standards and results which has been achieved at Da Vinci. As has also been pointed out, Leesbrook is widely held to be in the worst physical condition in the city, and that's why the Labour group has highlighted Leesbrook as a particular example of the wider problems for many of our secondary schools. But why was permission not given for Leesbrook, along with the 3 other schools that were saved from the axe earlier on in the summer? And why did Conservative and Liberal Democrat councillors vote to spend 40 million on plush council officers, and yet are neglecting our schools and failing to invest in our young people? Many millions has already been spent on architects' plans and feasibility studies, And whilst we have heard that that's been overly bureaucratic, in some ways, building schools for the future was such a visionary and complex project to embark on, building virtually every secondary school in the city. That's not something that can be done easily or cheaply. It's worth investing in good quality architects and getting it right. How crazy is it that that was cancelled with all that money wasted, poured down the drain, all that money which had already been invested in preparing those new school buildings? A real false economy. As has been mentioned by one of my colleagues, the Tory deputy leader in Sandwell has done the decent thing by resigning over these cuts and joined the Labour Party. She's recognised that Labour is the only party standing up for investment in education and our future generations. I'd really urge all councillors to look back at these pictures of Leesbrook, look at the state of the buildings and really think hard before you decide how you vote this evening.
Councillor Grimmerdow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's quite difficult, actually. I support Councillor Bolton's every word that Councillor Bolton has said this evening about our school in Chaddisden. And then we have the difficulty of all the schools in the city that need repair. I can only talk about Leesbrook Community School, which is in my ward. And Leesbrook School is very successful, with first-class results, has hard-working staff, and it's headed by a very dedicated principal, Phil Dover. Although Leesbrook College sits on Morley Road within Chaddisden Ward, as Councillor Bolton has said, pupils attending come from another 11 wards within the city, and 15 pupils who attend the college live outside the city. The old college buildings are the classrooms for the 11 to 16-year-olds. And like Councillor Bolton, I have a stack of photos from the college. And photos don't really tell the whole story. I think people have to visit this crumbling college. These buildings are just not fit for purpose. They are a total and absolute disgrace. Leesbrook College, from a building point of view, is a ticking time bomb. But I don't believe that this is a political issue. I think this is about the education of the city's children. We all have to be involved, Mr. Mayor, and I urge a cross-party campaign to get Leesbrook and the rest of the schools reinstated. I have pledged to Mr. Phil Dover my full support for Leesbrook, and this chamber tonight, Mr. Mayor, has to send out a very, very strong message that we don't intend to let Leesbrook Community College fall any further into disrepair, and similarly, we don't expect any of our schools within the city to fall further into disrepair. Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think most of what I was going to say has probably already been rehearsed by now. I fully support this amendment. I think all the children in this city deserve the best facilities we can give them for learning in. There is one point I think nobody has touched on, which is that many of these schools wouldn't be in the state they were if they'd been better maintained, and that goes back a long way through many administrations, and it's something during when I was cabinet member for assets that I continually banged on about and tried to in budget discussions to fight to protect the money for maintenance. I think some of these schools have been a little foolish in watching the carrot being dangling and postponing their maintenance. If you're going to have a new bathroom in 2 years' time and you've got a leaky tap now, you don't leave it for 2 years. And a lot of these schools would not be as bad as they are if they'd been better maintained. A note of hope. I don't know whether or not when the October CSR comes out, whether some of these schools will be back in. I would hope that in the lobbying, and I agree that we should lobby as hard as we can, that that we press the Minister to take into account the fact that if you have got a project that is very close to financial closure and you've spent all the money, that should be one of the items that is weighed in looking at which schools you are, and I assume that some will get reinstated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a risk now, and this is the risk. We will accept this amendment. However, I just want to make sure that people clearly understand that we can see there's potential here for crocodile tears from Liberal Democrat and Tory members across the chamber. And it's interesting to note we seem to have a split between them and their government in just over 100 days. What the Liberal Democrats have said doesn't reassure the Labour group, because they often say one thing here and say something somewhere else, and that's probably more so if it's in Derby and against Westminster. But I am moved, and we are more convinced by, I'd say, the bravery of Councillor Williams to say what she said in this chamber, because I find her more honourable than some of the Liberal Democrat members, in fact, all of them. And I just wondered whether, if they fail in their lobbying to get the money for the building schools for the future, that they would consider resigning on this issue. Because if it's a matter of principle, then surely they might. So let's see where far the stakes are in that respect. Reflecting on the situation with respect of Ulverston and Bolton, I have to say that we've got a new school in our area of the city in terms of Merrill, which is actually in Bolton Ward, and St Martin's, which is in Ulverston, and Baker, which is the school I went to, and I'm proud to be an ex-pupil of, is being rebuilt. But the point is that we went for the worst first, in terms of if everything's going to be done, we need to start with Leesbrook. But Littleover and Benedicts and all the other schools need attending to as well. So there, Mr Mayor, we're going to be brave and we're going to go for it. Even though a few of my members don't particularly like the 2 lines in the second paragraph, we're going to swallow it on this time, because we think the future of the citizens of Derby and the pupils and the teachers in their school is more important. And we'll hold you to account on it, because we are convinced the government, in terms of what it's doing, its thrust, its strategy is wrong. You've agreed that one of your policies is wrong. Well, we'll hold you to that account at the elections next May. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think pretty much everything's been said that should be said. And I welcome Councillor Bayliss' stance on that, on going down that path. I also have lobbied Michael Gove, emails, telephone calls, and without not much success, to be fair. I too, like my colleagues, and I thought Councillor Bolton presented the motion very, very well, and you covered pretty much everything on it. The photos of the condition of the school are actually appalling. I'm a parent of 3 school-aged children, and I would be absolutely livid if my children had to put up with that. But as a ward representative, no children across this city should put up with any of that conditions, whichever the school. It was totally unacceptable to send children in those types of conditions, coming up to winter, rain, cold, and all the health and safety issues that are there. A lot of people have pointed the blame tonight, pointed a finger, different people, they did that, they did this. Well, the school didn't get like that overnight. It's lacked maintenance for many, many years, as a lot of schools. So, you know, a lot of different ruling bodies at the time could have stepped in further and maybe kept up the maintenance, and it wouldn't be in the condition it is now. But pretty much on my Cabinet portfolio's resources, it's not only my job to try and find the money or find the resources, juggle things around. And that's what we intend to do, working with Councillor Bolton and all the other councillors and my colleagues, Councillor Williams and Councillor Grimmerhill. We are looking at other avenues. It may not be BSF. You know, it's looking very, very unlikely it will be BSF. But we are looking down at different avenues to try and find the money to get this school really what the children of Chaddeston need, and certainly all the children throughout the city need, is a proper school that they can go to in a safe environment and that's fit for purpose and fit for this century. And thank you very much.
Councillor Nater.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think everything's just about been said, what needs to be said. I just want to mention that I was one of the people that looked at the TV report on Littleover School this morning, and quite rightly, you know, a lot of our secondary schools are in a bad state of repair. So I welcome what Councillor Bolton had to say, and I think Councillor Bayliss's vision seems to be deferring onto his own group and reflecting onto the Liberal Democrats. But that's by and by of it. But I would just like to point out, I would like to support, you know, school. I go coaching down there quite a lot at Leesbrook, most of the school areas and everything. But talking about shag pile carpets, I think it's probably Ed Balls, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown that's left them there.
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This problem with the schools, I agree, there's quite a lot of schools in Derby need attention. But certainly the school that, in my opinion, needs the most attention is certainly Leesbrook. I first visited Leesbrook before I became a councillor, and it was in a terrible state then. I visited it again a year and a half ago, and it was decidedly worse, and I visited it recently, and I've taken an extensive tour of the school, and it is just not fit for purpose. Quite honestly, how the teachers, staff and the pupils have achieved what they have achieved this year, because they've achieved record passes, and that's a tremendous credit for this school because it is in an absolute deplorable state. And quite honestly, Councillor Bolton has put it very extensively. In fact, I only wish she'd have rung me before yesterday, and I wouldn't have done the work I did yesterday on this school, because I could have said many of the things regarding pupils, about Oakwood, over 30% of the pupils at that school come from my ward, and I'm particularly concerned about this. Most of the children, if not all of them this year, have gone from Parkview, the school in my ward, to Leesbrook. But as the Ed said to me the other day when I was with him, he said that this year they haven't had their full commitment, and he feels it is because of the state of the school. Yes, I emphasise the problems of asbestos. I emphasise the fact that the classrooms' windows can't be opened. There are parts of the school boarded off because of the danger to pupils. And quite honestly, if it was an health and safety situation, it would be closed tomorrow. It's imperative that this school gets the support and gets the rebuild. It's absolutely deplorable, and it wants to be done, if not tomorrow, yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dent, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's obviously the decision and the support for this motion, the original motion and the amended motion, is a no-brainer. And it looks as if it's coming to a one-brainer now. The reality is, Councillor Bolton has given the most extensive and most moving account of what the situation and issue is in Leesbrook School, which we all know can be reflected in many other schools, that were part of the BSF programme implemented by the previous government. The need led to the plan and the project. The need has not disappeared, the money has. And we're all agreed in this chamber that that decision has to be reversed. We may want to blame different aspects, different parties and different groups, but the reality is the funding is much needed, and many people have said how awful and difficult it will be for the staff, the pupils and the local community if this decision remains the way it is at the moment, and the Secretary for State, Michael Gove, does not reconsider and reinstate the decision to fund Leesbrook School in particular. We can argue about the merits and demerits of the different resolutions, and we don't really need to do that because we need to rise above that to join together to have a concerted effort to save the standard and the facilities for our children in particularly the northern part of the city. Now, we should do that, and I think it's a general agreement by all that we will work together to make sure that this decision is reversed and that we do get the funding to make sure that all the children in the city of Derby, in all the schools that have been identified, as far as possible, can have the funds to have the facilities that they deserve and future generations deserve. I think we should also try to get support and ask questions of our MPs recently elected. I thought they're not here, but support isn't just for people in this chamber. Leesbrook sits obviously in Derby North in Shettleston, but as Councillor Bolton highlighted, it does provide places for children in Elstree, Oakwood and Spondon, which are all in the constituency of Mid Derbyshire, which I got to know quite well recently. And I'd like to know, possibly the officers could help us with that, but possibly the media could help us with that. If they could ask questions of the local MPs in terms of what lobbying, what representation they've made on behalf of the pupils and residents of using Leesbrook School and the Derby North and Mid Derbyshire constituencies in particular. I know the member for Derby North, what he's been doing. I'd like to know what the member for Mid Derbyshire has been doing, because hopefully she carries more weight with Michael Gove than some of the members in this chamber have been able to do in terms of trying to get her attention onto the issues that are pertinent and real and devastating for people in Leesbrook School and the staff and pupils. So I would reluctantly support the amended resolution because it still carries a thrust of what we all want, and that's funding to be reinstated for Leesbrook School and other schools which are in a similar dilapidated state of disrepair. Because we deserve better for the city of Derby, but more importantly, we deserve better for the pupils who are attending that school and those who will attend in the future. So let's get together and get this sorted and get Michael Gove down here as quickly as possible.
Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add something slightly different. On the day that Michael Gove made his announcement, we actually, as I'm a governor at Derby Moor, we actually had an extra governors meeting, ironically enough, to sign some contracts to do with BSF. But you can imagine the state of shock that everybody was in. At the news, we didn't know whether any of the schools which were the sample schools were going to be included or not. Thankfully, they have been. But we do still need to press the case very strongly that because we, like I think another 33 local authorities across the country, have already reached preferred bidder stage, we've got so close to financial close, as was mentioned I think by Councillor Williams earlier on, that really to waste all that effort and all that money makes no sense at all. And we really do need to press upon him that these ones, like ourselves, really do need to be allowed to go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Bamber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really sort of incensed by some of the comments made that this isn't a political issue. I believe, Mr. Mayor, this is a clash of values, as we've seen on so many issues. And again, it's the Labour group setting the agenda, once again in this city, on such a crucial matter as the future of our young people. And let's look at the origins of BSF. When BSF was launched in 2004, it was the most ambitious programme of its kind anywhere in the world. And that's a fact. It was aimed to benefit over 3 million children, school children, in our country. And the reality is, Mr. Mayor, it's not just about buildings. It's about what that means. It's about creating a fair society. It's about social mobility. It's about raising the aspirations of our young. And we seem to have missed those points, and the opposition have failed to highlight that. It's just not about buildings, Mr. Mayor. And this is a political issue. And you can't wash your hands of your involvement in this. You represent parties, a coalition government that's scrapping BSF. I mean, what planet do you live on? I mean, the reality is you're part of a government that's cancelling BSF.
Listen to Councillor Bamber, please.
And if you think you can get away with making superficial comments in this chamber and not face any repercussions, Mr. Mayor, that's going to be wrong. Mr. Mayor, the reality is this is just the beginning the beginning of devastating plans that are going to absolutely prove catastrophic for the young people in our city. And the councillors in this chamber, all of us, represent those young people and owe them a lot more. Let's look at the next plans for this Conservative government. Free schools. The reality is this is just the beginning. What we're going to see is privatisation en masse of our schools. So this is just the beginning. Will you oppose that? This free schools concept will actually cut the umbilical cord between schools and local government. And a lot of these schools depend on that. And the reality is, Mr. Mayor, these schools cannot sustain without support from local government. So, Mr. Mayor, if we're going to carry on with supporting BSF, and it is, and I remind the councillors in this chamber, it's a flagship Labour policy you're supporting here. Mr. Mayor, it's absolutely crucial that we get the support for this, and I commend Councillor Bolton for once again setting the agenda not only for her own ward of Chaddesden, but on behalf of the Labour group. So, Mr. Mayor, it's absolutely crucial we allow this BSF programme to continue, not only for Leesbrook, but for the other 11 schools. I mean, I've got the document here, the Building Schools for the Future, outline business case, signed by Councillor Allen himself. And he's spoken how he believes passionately that building schools for the future, a Labour policy, a flagship Labour policy, is right for the city of Derby. So, Mr. Mayor, we've got to continue with this, but let's not forget the 11 other schools that this policy is there to benefit. And this Labour group will absolutely make it this Labour group.
Hold on, please. Listen to Councillor Van Beth.
And this Labour group will continue its campaign. And I urge the people of Derby, and we'll be certainly doing that on the campaign trail, as we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and we'll certainly be continuing it up until the election and beyond that, urging the people of Derby to do the right thing and return this City Council back to the control of the Labour group. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Jones. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased the Labour group are going to support the amendment, and in a sense that they have seen the light, that they had missed out some of the other schools that we all represent in our ward. I don't deny, having seen the pictures of Leesbrook, that Leesbrook is in a dire state. This group, my group, have always been keen, and as Councillor Allen has already said, we have already started to lobby, where we can, the government to reverse the decision. It is ludicrous, having spent all this money getting to the state we've got and all the hard work of our officers, raising the aspirations of the pupils and the teachers and the parents in this city, to have them dashed. And we owe it to those people to do all we possibly can to try and reverse the government's decision. It is, Councillor Banwit, the government's decision. If the government decide they're not going to put any money back into building schools for the future, then that leaves an immense burden on this council to try and repair and bring those buildings up to a decent state. I would like to say that they haven't got in that state overnight. It's happened over many, many years, and probably every administration needs to bear some responsibility for that. Those sorts of damages do not get in that state overnight. And we haven't got to forget, have we, that for the last 12 or was it 13 years, it seemed like eternity, we had the Labour government. Why didn't they put more money in earlier? Why are we left in this state now? We need to salvage what we possibly can, and I really hope that every member here can vote for this motion as amended, because it was sensible to amend it to include all the schools in our city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can we move to the vote?
I have got two more speakers. I've got to give them the chance. Councillor Jennings and then Councillor Jackson. She would be the... I actually haven't got your name on the list, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Jennings, please.
Mr. Mayor, I wasn't intending to speak on this issue this evening. However, everything was going swimmingly until Councillor Banwaite started. I think, Mr. Mayor, I would echo Councillor Jones's move to the vote recommendation.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Marshall, as the Cabinet Member for Resources, has said that he will recommendably try to find the money to rebuild the school, Leesbrook School specifically. Well, I can tell you where to find the money. I can solve your problem for you now. Stop the refurbishment of the council house. It may be in a bad state. Yes, it is in a bad state. And I've been here a lot longer than most of the members in this council chamber. But it's not as bad as Leesbrook School. And that's where the money needs to be spent in future. Now, if you don't remind the people of Chaddesden, the Labour Party in Derby certainly will, that you would prefer to have a nice, comfortable council house while the children and the staff and the governors and the parents have to suffer in Leesbrook School in Chaddesden, your ward.
Okay, Councillor Roberts.
Can I just say that as far as the amendment is concerned, what it does is not a great deal except take Leesbrook out, and I think it's trying somewhere to make a cheap political point about the Labour Party, Joe, if you've got a problem. You know, the issue is fairly simple. If you read the original motion, it doesn't preclude any schools in the city, it merely prioritises Leesbrook. The second paragraph, if you can read, says, thereby putting at risk the renewal of school buildings already identified as being well beyond their useful life. And I think that Councillor Banwaite did actually refer to the Building Schools for the Future programme, signed off by Councillor Allen, which does identify all of those schools. All that this side of the House is saying is very simple. Leesbrook is the worst school in the city, and we think it should be given priority, and we want to tell the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition that what we need to do is to actually work towards restoring that necessary funding for building schools for the future. And I don't care what you call it, Councillor Marshall, as long as you do it. That's the critical point of this. Councillor Harwood tells us that pupils are not going to Leesbrook because of the state of the school, and I probably think that's right. But what he doesn't say is that they're probably going to the brand new state-of-the-art facility that's next door to Oakwood. In fact, the school actually borders the boundary of Oakwood, which is Da Vinci, and their results are rapidly improving, and they will attract more people there. And the fact is, when you've got new facilities and improved facilities, they will attract pupils, and they will, as Councillor Rawson has quite rightly said, show an improvement in results, because that's how things are. And as far as recognising the need for reducing government expenditure inherited from the previous government, I'm glad to see that the Liberal Democrats locally have changed their tune a little bit. They're actually looking at the national position now, because it used to be that they said it was the previous administration that made all the mistakes. But that was in this city. And of course, guess who the previous administration were in this city? Well, that's who you are. It was you. You had 2 years to do all these things that you've been saying were not done. And what did you do? Not a great deal. Except complain about the previous administration. Well, I'll wait and see if you ever do complain about yourselves. You've probably forgotten that you did nothing. Not much to remember anyway. And the other one, the final thing is, I'm delighted that Councillor Jones has said that she believes we've seen the light. If the light is there for us to see, let's just hope that Nick Clegg actually looks out and sees it, because if he didn't support the Conservative government in what they're doing, then we might actually get building schools for the future in Derby, and it's only your lot who are propping up a Conservative government that are delivering the cuts that you're having to put up with.
Okay, now we are going to move to the vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please show. That's carried. Now we're coming back to the substantive motive as amended. Anybody wishes to speak before I ask Councillor Bolton to wind it up? Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the last hour and 13 minutes has been well spent talking about this motion, and I'm glad that we as a group put it down because it's highlighted the issues at Leesbrook and throughout the city. But now the motion is as amended. You know, I feel I voted for it reluctantly, and as I said at the beginning of my speech when I introduced it, we mentioned Leesbrook because it is the worst secondary school in the city. So that's why the priority was there. Da Vinci, as has been mentioned, is already built. Merrill is already built. And one speaker, I think from the Liberal Democrats, said during his contribution that schools will be refurbished and rebuilt. They are not all going to be rebuilt. Some are just being remodelled and refurbished. But Leesbrook is a total new rebuild. I think there seems to be some anomalies there. The letter that... That's not my phone, by the way. It's Michael Gove, probably, he's watching. The letter I received from Michael Gove's office back at the beginning of August does actually say that there is no further BSF programme funding. So whilst I am reluctant to support the amended motion, because we have said to reverse his decision to stop building schools for the future, I don't think that's likely. But nevertheless, we can only do our best. When I spoke to Phil Dover, the principal, last week, I have to say that he did mention the city MPs. Some were being helpful, some weren't. And without mentioning names, the actual MP for Mid Derbyshire wasn't being that helpful. But let's hope she got national recognition for her services to education. Let's hope she can do education proud in Leesbrook School, where some of her constituents go to. But I have to say quite openly that Mr Dover wasn't that enlightened by the response he received from the MP for Mid Derbyshire. Nevertheless, I am pleased, summing up, Mr Mayor, that we have spent time on this motion this evening. We put the motion down because of our concern and the education for children and young people in this city. And I welcome some of the comments made by all parties tonight in supporting the motion and the condition of Leesbrook Community Sports College. The photographs did in some way go and show you the condition and the terrible state of repair it's in. But please, if you've got time, go and see for yourself, because when you walk round the school, the various blocks, the 10 blocks, as I said, you do get the overall impression of a dowdy, run-down school, but they are achieving excellent results. And can I sum up by saying that I praise and congratulate the staff and pupils at Leesbrook Community Sports College for the work they're doing, despite the terrible conditions they're having to work and learn in. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favour of the substantive motion as amended, please show. That's unanimous, is carried. Thank you very much. That concludes today's meeting. Safe journey home.